Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. We're going to talk about the updated Texas football roster, look at heights, weights, some number changes, and how it all potentially impacts the 2025 season. We'll do that here in just a second. Before we do that, though, I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. It's Allegiant Digital Marketing. We'll tell you more about Allegiant Digital and their CEO, Chad Markham, and his great company here later in the show. But as promised, CJ, let's talk about the updated roster, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty with heights and weights, but some updated numbers, specifically numbers for the newcomers. Emmett Mosley going to be wearing number 3. Matthew Caldwell, the incoming quarterback transfer from Troy, number 18. Mason Shipley, number 49. I kind of hope that changes because it just a kicker wearing a linebacker's number just kind of just wheels off to me, but I digress. Devin Coleman going to be wearing number 59, Jordan Coleman, number 78, Nick Townsend, number 81, Jack Indries, number 88. I think people need to get used to seeing that one. Levon Johnson, number 96, and then Murad Watson stepping in to number 98. CJ, any thoughts at all on the new numbers, the newcomer numbers for the members of the roster?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited to see number 3. Number 3 back in action on the offense, Emmett Mosley. And that offense is going to be pretty interesting, right? Because you got number 0, DeAndre Moore. You got number 1 with Ryan Wingo, who made the switch from 5. Trey Wisner now at 5. I was trying to go a little musical chairs there. Obviously, got in my own head. But number 1 is going to be Ryan Wingo. Number 5 now Trey Wisner. And, of course, Parker Livingstone over at 13. So there's your wide receiver numbers. And then looking at tight ends, look, 88, that's going to be an interesting number, as well as 81 for Nick Townsend. I like that number for Nick Townsend to start, but I'm with you. I feel like these are all pretty status quo numbers for the newcomers coming in.
Well, you got to the first 3 numbers in the roll there. Actually, 4 if you include 0. But let's talk about number 4, because that's where I want to start with updated heights and weights. And you can get over to ontexasfootball.com. CJ's got a full breakdown of all of these, along with some other notes. But CJ, the big thing that stands out to me at running back, and I don't want to start out on necessarily a negative, but it does bring about some questions in my mind. CJ Baxter, 227 pounds. It's quite the leap. And look, we've seen him. Everybody saw him at the Women's College World Series. We've seen him around campus. We know he's been working his way back. I just wonder, and maybe this is just me having a little, PTSD, thinking worst case scenario. But I remember when Jonathan Gray had a really serious injury about a decade ago, and I thought got too big when he came back. I think Jordan Whittington at one point in his career, coming off of an injury, got too big and too bulked up coming back from an injury. I worry about that happening, CJ, with CJ Baxter, but given the nature of his injury, it might be a good thing that it'll take him a little bit to get going, so maybe Torrey Becton and company will be able to figure out his proper body structure by the time he's really ready to go during the season.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously did not play last year. Looking back to 2023 as a true freshman, he was playing around 216, 217 in that range. So this is about 10 pounds heavier, right? Maybe 12, 13 if he gets up to about 230. That's what he was listed in the spring. So a 3-pound decrease doesn't make a whole lot of difference there. But point being, 10 pounds from where the last we really saw him on the field. And is that where you want to be given the status of the knee, what that return might look like? Only CJ Baxter and Torrey Becton truly know. I think we talk about adding that armor at the running back position as a positive for a guy coming off of a major injury. Is it a positive? Does it work the same? I don't know. I'm not a physician. I'm not a knee specialist. But what I do know is, hey, Texas doesn't have a running back like him physically on the roster. And should he be healthy, he's going to provide something to this team that nobody else can. So that's a positive. And that's the big takeaway for me is, if he's healthy, you have a 230-pound back at 6'2", ready to tote the rock in tight distance situations.
Yeah, and we talk about this offense, and we'll talk about the offensive line here in a second, but we talked ad nauseum since the end of the season, as we're on the cusp now of SEC Media Days, talking about the need to be better in short yardage, goal line, red zone situations, and the impact the running game has on those red zone numbers and your goal line numbers and your production in those areas. And maybe this is a good thing. And one guy that we started to see the shift from him coming into Texas as a smaller guy and leaving with a bigger body structure with more armor put on him was Keontae Ingram. Now, the downside was going into 2020, we know that was a truncated offseason, number one. And number two, you signed the best running back in the country that year. And when Keontae really had the fumble problems, and then that coincided with Bijan getting healthy from that scare out in Lubbock, and we all know how that story ended. Keontae Ingram still ended up making it to the NFL after transferring to USC, which there are worse places for a running back to transfer than Southern Cal. So if you look at it from a positive, it's that standpoint. And the bottom line, CJ, maybe the extra armor, that's to help CJ Baxter really kind of hold up as an inside zone runner, a between the tackles runner in a conference where, man, if you're going to thump between the tackles in the SEC, you're going to get your nose bloodied. At least you better be prepared for it.
Yeah, 100%. Again, we talk about needing armor. We talked about it for Quinn last year, playing 15, 16 games. Obviously, he got dinged up along the way. For a running back, even more so, the lifeline and shelf life of a running back is already pretty scarce. So for Baxter, if he comes back ready to play week 4, that extra weight should get him through what could be a 16-game schedule for the Horns as the season continues.
CJ, you broke it down, so the rest of us didn't have to, so thank you for this. I'm talking about the interior of the Texas offensive line, an average weight, according to your calculations, of just under 317 pounds. Even though you lose Jake Majors and Hayden Connor, you're actually a tad heavier with Neto Mazzulo, Cole Hudson, and DJ Campbell. CJ, Cole Hudson at 308 pounds. DJ Campbell's one, though, that, again, I don't even care what he's listed at on the roster. It bears repeating. This is the best looking version of DJ Campbell we've seen since he's been at Texas. We know Neto's been chomping at the bit to get his chance to be a starter. I've got to think, CJ, the combination of, and keep in mind, Cole Hudson was a 13-game starter as a true freshman, hasn't started a game since. I'm hoping the chip on the shoulder, CJ, is the thing that really gets this interior line group over the top and can help this offense, them as the focal point, help this offense be a better short yardage, goal line, red zone offense. I'm hoping it's that interior of the offensive line. The weights all check out, the physical stuff checks out. It's just, do they have that little extra about them to be able to get over the hump?
Yeah, that's going to be the key. And I think Texas on the interior has the size necessary, right? We talked about it in the spring. They were about 5 pounds heavier combined than what they are now. I think summer conditioning, obviously working out in the summer heat, probably causes you to lose a little bit extra weight. So will they gain some more as the season continues? Will they lose? We'll have to wait and see. But Cole Hudson actually lost about 6 or 7 pounds based off of his spring roster update as well. He's around 314 at the time, now at 308. It's not a big deal there. Jake Majors played around 305. So for the guards, however, I think for DJ Campbell, the big thing is he's coming in around 325, 327 in that range. There was at one point in his career about a year and a half ago, he came in at 340 pounds.
Yeah.
And that's big for a guy that's about 6'3", right? I don't need to go into the details, but 340 pounds on anybody is big. And specifically for DJ, we talk about him being in the best shape of his life, at least at Texas. It absolutely holds truth. Again, for him, just coming in at 325, being able to hold on to that mobility, Jeff, that ability to pull the ferocity that he plays with off or at the guard spot. That's something that was a big strength of his coming out of high school. If he's able to get that back and really have that be a big strength of his once again, that's a huge boost to the Longhorns as they work to manufacture that interior run game once again in 2025.
So based on the roster where guys are listed, you've got Cole Hudson, like we said, at 308, DJ Campbell listed at 321, Neto at 325. You got plenty of beef in there. The goal now, CJ, is can your large humans displace the other team's large humans and create a push along the line of scrimmage when you really need it? CJ, let's just stick on the offense real quick. We can look at some of the heights and weights and talk about those, but what really stands out to you? Because if you look at the heaviest players on the roster, I like the fact that it's spread out between the offensive and defensive line. Josiah Sharma, you win the ice cream sundae or whatever award we're giving the heaviest guy on the roster at 356 pounds. Jordan Coleman at 350, Nick Brooks at 349, Cole Brevard at 346. There was a typo on the roster, so we'll go Travis Shaw at 342, not 242, unless Travis Shaw had some kind of, I don't know, whatever the new bariatric surgery is that allowed him to trim down in a few months, but probably not. So we'll assume that's a typo. And then Connor Stroh at 341, Andre Kojo at 335. CJ, anything stand out to you with just the biggest guys on the roster?
Yeah, I'm looking at Nick Brooks, 349 pounds. That's still big, don't get me wrong, but this is a guy that came in on that Cam Williams path, right? Cam Williams came to campus around 360 pounds. I think that was even larger number for Nick Brooks when he arrived in January. Now down to 349. I think it was around 365 when he arrived. That's already a 15-pound difference of when he arrived. I think his playing weight will ultimately be around 335 in that range. But if you can get him down in that 345, 340 range as the season progresses, you're going to feel really comfortable should he be asked to step in and play for a Trevor Gooseby or play for a Brandon Baker. He's impressed behind the scenes. I don't need to go into the details. Folks who have followed OTF for a while know that Nick Brooks is somebody that we talk about very highly. The weight change for me is a huge boost in regards to where he's going in his career. The interesting note is on the defensive line as well. And look, Josiah Sharma coming in at 356. That's a big human. And if you've seen him in person, you can tell right away his shoulders go out to about double that of mine, right? He's probably got to turn sideways to get into door frames. 100%. It's a big human. So I'm interested to see how he continues to maintain his weight moving forward, because that's a guy that clogs up 2 running gaps just by standing still, right? So that's a big, big human. I'm encouraged by him. And of course, as you mentioned, Travis Shaw, 242. Come on right now. That's a bigger human than that. You can probably add a 3 to both of those 2s, and it'd be certainly accurate now.
CJ, we'll talk about some of the skill guys and then switch over to defense here in just a second. But I want to thank our sponsor again for this edition of On Texas Football. It's Allegiant Digital Marketing. Are you a business owner who struggles with the following? Finding new customers, consistent leads, finding marketing services to promote your business that actually work? Well, founder and CEO Chad Markham with Allegiant Digital Marketing. It's an Austin-based advertising agency. Chad's been helping thousands of business owners just like you for over 25 years conquer these same challenges. So if you're ready to start making money in your business and grow with confidence, visit allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball and get a free marketing plan. Plus, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising with their Hook'em Horns special today. Again, that's allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball. You get your free marketing plan. Plus, with their Hook'em Horns special, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising. Thank you to Chad Markham and Allegiant Digital for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football and being a very, very good partner to us here at On Texas Football. CJ, real quick on the skill guys. We talked about adding armor to some of those guys. Do want to mention Trey Weiser at 194 pounds. I don't think that's too drastic of a change from where he was listed on the spring roster. But I want to go outside real quick. If we're giving Josiah Sharma the ice cream sundae or whatever, I guess Aaron Butler gets the Slim Jim for being the lightest player on the roster at 170 pounds. The other lightest player is Santana, and I'm sure this isn't going to shock anybody. It's all DBs and wide receivers. Santana Wilson at 174, Dalen McCutcheon at 178, Caleb Chester at 179, Grayson Littleton at 180, Jalen Gilbo at 183. Wardell Mack, CJ, are you still bullish on him, even though we corrected his weight from the 212 he was listed at in spring practice to what looked like probably the whole time was the correct 184?
Yeah, I still like Wardell Mack. I might have liked him a little bit more at 212, knowing that he moved as well as he did, playing near the line of scrimmage. Obviously, an inaccuracy there, but 185, if he's playing at that weight, I think that's a pretty solid size for him. Of course, being able to stick with the slot receiver, not an easy thing to do, especially if you're carrying a lot of weight. So I'm a fan of that weight for him. Size for wide receivers to me just doesn't matter. I don't know how others feel, but obviously we've watched Xavier Worthy for 3 years at Texas torch defenses at 165 pounds. Now, speed needs to be the offset of being a lighter guy, but for me, all in all, does not matter what your weight is at the wide receiver position as long as you protect yourself down the field. The other thing is, and Jeff, let me get your thoughts. Texas certainly has some height as well. We talk about how big this group of offensive linemen and how heavy the defensive linemen are. That's a taller group of wide receivers as well this year. 6'4", Parker Livingstone. You start looking around, you got a number of guys 6'2" or taller. as many as I've seen under Steve Sarkisian, and as many as I've seen, and really going back to the days of perhaps Alvonte Woodard, you'd look at Brennan Eagles, Colin Johnson as well. It's the tallest group of wide receivers Texas has had in quite a while.
Yeah, of the guys that have a chance to be in the circle of trust, you're really looking at 3 guys that are 6 foot or shorter, with DeAndre Moore, which we know he's in there for sure. Dalen McCutcheon, who might have had the best spring of the newcomers, and then Aaron Butler, who, again, we didn't see much of last year. We'll see what kind of impact he makes once we get to camp. But, yeah, a little bit bigger bodied. And, again, this is one of the questions that – and I know Sark is going to get hit with tons of questions about the roster and a lot of other stuff at SEC Media Days. I feel bad because Sark is about to get just verbally beaten down by the clearinghouse and NIL and all this other stuff that I think a lot of these guys just want to get to the field and just play ball. But one of the things, CJ, I want to talk to Sark about is the body types you're recruiting at wide receiver. Is it just that these were the guys on the board when you evaluated them? Did you want to try to get bigger? Is it, hey, you're in the SEC, you're facing bigger corners, we need to recruit bigger receivers? And again, it's not necessarily height, it's height and weight. Like, you look, Ryan Wingo, I mean, it may not seem like it to people, but CJ, what is Ryan Wingo at this point? 214 pounds at 6'2". He's in Roy Williams territory in terms of his size. I don't think people realize like how just big, how physically impressive Ryan Wingo is. So yeah, you're talking about some bigger bodied receivers. Again, I think it goes back to with the kind of throws Arch is going to make in this offense, the kind of throws that Arch probably feels most comfortable with, the deep comebacks, the deep stops, those square ends, the stuff that maybe some old school hard play action is going to take a little longer to develop. You probably need some guys that are going to be able to hang on to the ball in a tight window where maybe they're probably going to take a shot. It's less about yak and more about, our quarterback's arm strength to push the ball down the field is going to create the explosive play, not necessarily running after the catch like we've seen the last couple of years with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. But, CJ, I want to go over to defense. Linebacker, I know, was a position that you wanted to talk about because it started with Jeff Choate. It's continuing with Johnny Nansen. There was a time under Todd Orlando, and it wasn't necessarily a Todd Orlando problem. It was just I think a lot of staffs really struggled to figure out the type of athlete they needed to recruit to play off-ball linebacker at the power conference level. Jeff Choate hit a couple of home runs with Anthony Hill and Leonga Lafau back in that 2023 cycle. We've seen what Johnny Nansen's been doing on the recruiting trail with PK as the head of the brain trust. It seems like Texas now, CJ, understands what exactly they're looking for in off-ball linebackers.
Yeah, I put them in 2 categories. One's 240 and can get after the quarterback. The other's about 220, 225, and mans the middle of the field. Obviously, you're going to ask your linebackers to do just about both, regardless of their height and weight. But you got your first group, right? That's the Anthony Hills. That's your Brad Spence. Trey Moore at 249. It's a big body now playing off-ball linebacker, Jeff. But we obviously saw how well he was able to move a year ago off the edge. Versatility that just is going to be very, very difficult for opposing offensive coordinators and offensive lines to identify and protect against next year. And then, of course, you look at Bo Barnes, the guy waiting in line after Anthony Hill, 240 pounds. You like the size of which these guys are already at. Also throwing in the fact that, hey, Bo Barnes is already running 21 miles per hour plus, right, at 240 pounds. Freakish guy. We already know 10'9" in high school. That's just what Texas has been recruiting you with these jumbo athletes. And then you start looking at what's that other group of linebackers already at. Ty Smith getting up to about 220. That's a great sign. Leon Lafau jumping 10 pounds from the spring to 227. You really like seeing that as well. And, of course, Jonathan Cunningham, where he is in his development, obviously a redshirt year in store for him, in my opinion. I think you'll get him up to about 210 by the start of next year, and then eventually into that 215, 220 range for him to play in space, something that was a big strength of his at North Crowley last year as a senior. But, Jeff, one of those big numbers that we haven't talked yet, and we're going to go back to the secondary, Jonah Williams, 6'3", 213 on the roster. He was listed at 6'3", 200 pounds on the baseball roster in the spring. Now 13-pound increase from that roster to the football roster. I'm excited to see 6'3", 213-pound Jonah Williams play some football this fall.
I just go back to, the day that the regional started. Galveston Ball had their graduation ceremony the night before. And I'm thinking, 17-year-old Jonah Williams should have been walking at graduation last night. Didn't, because the following morning he's starting in left field in a regional and getting you a couple of base hits at a victory. So just a special athlete. I really want to see how at this level that translates to the football field. We can think down the road, does he have to pick one or the other? Is he going to kind of be forced without necessarily being quote unquote, just kind of a quote unquote force without having his hand forced to pick one or the other? Let's think about that later and enjoy a legitimately special two-sport athlete right now, because I'm with you. I'm pumped to see what he's going to bring to the gridiron. Last thing, CJ, real quick, just on the defensive line, Levon Johnson at 311 pounds, 6'2", Murad Watson, 6'3", 313, exactly where you want to see him. Alex January at 308 pounds, just kind of getting his body right. And as you know, for the big guys, as they get their bodies right, some guys might go up in weight, some guys might go down in weight. For Alex January, maybe it's trimming up a little bit, getting down to 308. But CJ, I'm liking the way this defensive line is coming together when you look at the sizes and shapes and the talent levels of an Alex January, just what we saw in flashes last year. Murad Watson, his 1 year at Syracuse, what he did. I've used the word intriguing a lot, but it really is. It's going to be an intriguing fall for this defensive line that continues to grow together.
Yeah, Alex January came in at 325. So to see him now at 308 or around there, I mean, that's a pretty drastic change in my eyes. But it hasn't changed what we've heard behind the scenes about what his impact will be in the fall. Of course, I believe him to be right there with the Cole Brevard on the interior. Cole Brevard, 346. We talked about it earlier. He's just a mountain of a man, a boulder, if you will, while looking at his physical appearance. But I do think Alex January is going to play more nimbly. I think he's going to be able to be more of a threat getting after the passer from the interior, something that Texas certainly has benefited from over the last 2 years with the Byron Murphy. We saw Vernon Broughton have a couple strip sacks as well a year ago. But to be a guy that can be a total rock on the interior, I don't need to go through the number of fourth down stops that Texas has had through the years, Jeff, but it all stems from having those guys on the inside. Alex January is certainly going to be a piece of that puzzle this fall.
Yeah, you got Hero Canoe at 299 pounds, like you said, Josiah Sharma at 356, Melvin Hills still on the roster at 302 pounds. Again, Travis Shaw is actually on the roster, CJ. It has been corrected, so he's at 342, so they got it right with Travis Shaw finally, and then Myron Charles at 319. Last two guys I want to mention, Justice Terry, 6'5", 268. Lance Jackson, 6'5", 264. I don't care what shades they're playing up front, CJ. These two guys are going to get on the field and probably get on the field pretty early.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Justice Terry, I think that solidifies him more as an edge, maybe some 5 tech. You'll see him more as a 7 or a 9 as the season continues off the edge. That's kind of what we've been hearing anyways. We've reported that on Texas Football. But I know the video game has him about 330 pounds. So that's an inaccuracy all in all. He's not going to be playing your nose. He's not going to be playing any inside shades yet. Will he get to that weight? We'll see. 290 would have to be that kind of that qualifier for me. But I cannot wait to see some Justice Terry flying around, getting after the quarterback. And Texas, again, we've talked about it. Plenty of talent right now in that front 7.
All right, you can get more over on ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, if you want to be an OTFOG, you can sign up right now using that promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Get over there and join the conversation. We got recruiting, football. Obviously, we're getting ready for SEC Media Days. We've got baseball portal, the baseball draft coming up. Basketball's rolling with Sean Miller really ramping it up on the international recruiting. All kinds of stuff over at ontexasfootball.com. Again, the promo code is OTFOG. If you're not a member, that'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. Make sure you are subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Go ahead and like this video. We'll keep you up to date with everything going on the 40 acres here on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com as much as we can. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.